Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm excited about bringing on Rod Mackenzie to the show to talk about the Miami Georgia Tech game. Rod covers the Yellow Jackets for GoJackets.com and the 24/7 network. Rod, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great. Hope everything's good for you down there.
Yeah, doing all right. The mood is a lot different with the Miami fan base based on the couple wins they've picked up. I want to get into Georgia Tech's schedule. I've had a chance to watch three of their games: the North Carolina game, Pittsburgh, and then Virginia Tech over the weekend. Um, First, let's talk about some of the Miami. They have three Miami guys on the roster. Maybe just an update on how they're doing. That's Kalani Norris out of Columbus, Malik Rutherford out of Champagnat, and Kaya Wright out of South Miami. Just how are those three guys doing?
Yeah, let's start with Kai is sort of behind the eight ball. He's sort of what they call a tweener. Uh, they have him playing at linebacker now. When they moved briefly to a excuse me, a 3-3 5. Now there looks like they're maybe going back to a 4-4-2. So he's a little behind as far as the depth chart goes. He's looking to get stronger. Maybe build up some weight so he can compete at that position. Kalani Norris, excuse me, he stepped up in the spring, made a name for himself when he had really disappeared on the roster for a while, and he's starting to get some play now. He's in that slot position, which may be one of the deepest positions on Georgia Tech's roster, but he's a skilled player. He just has to learn how to be consistent and catch those catchable balls. And I believe that the third one you're asking for was
Malik Rutherford.
Malik Rutherford. Yeah, he's been from day one. Malik has been a guy that's really shown that he has that elite speed that they're looking for out of the slot. And again, it's a case of playing at a loaded position. He's made some good strides this year, playing behind Kyrique McGowan, a transfer from Northwestern, and Nate McCullum, who was a freshman last year. So they expect big things out of Rutherford, and I'm sure they're happy with all three guys.
So let's talk about Georgia Tech, kind of with where they're at right now. Like I said, it's been an interesting season, kind of watching from afar after that big North Carolina win, and I feel like with Miami too. Miami's had a very interesting season. The pulse was not good around Miami at 2-4, but now they pick up wins over ranked teams, NC State and Pitt, and all of a sudden they're kind of in this mix for the Coastal Division. But going into this game, I was looking at some ACC ranks, kind of where both of these teams rank just in conference games, and they're very similar. They're pretty close in a lot of categories. There was one category that the biggest difference was the rushing offense. Georgia Tech's 6th in the ACC, Miami's 12th. That's the biggest discrepancy between the two teams. And we'll get into Jeff Sims, and you could talk about his running ability, but just let's talk with Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit. Kind of the things he's bringing to the team. To me, he looks like the best running back Miami is facing in the ACC. I feel like he does have he's certainly a threat coming off 100-yard games. Just what is it about Gibbs, and just what kind of running back would you say he is?
Yeah, Gibbs is a kid. When he came in, everyone thought of him as an elite running back in the country, not only the ACC, but he's a kid that runs for power, also can make you miss when he gets out in the open, and he's also played a big role in the passing game, catching the ball out of the backfield. Unfortunately for him, at times this year, the Georgia Tech offensive line has been banged up. They're playing two guards right now who really weren't in the picture to start the year, and one of them was a walk-on, and they're hoping to maybe get some of their offensive linemen back. They had to move Ryan Johnson out to tackle from the guard position. If they were able to move him back inside, that'll really enable Gibbs to do maybe a better job running between the tackles. But once he gets to the second level, watch out, because I imagine you saw that 61-yard run against Virginia Tech, and I think if he had to take that one back, he would maybe have kept running straight ahead instead of trying to make that cut where he slipped. But yeah, he's a guy that can hurt you in a lot of different ways, and I think before it's over, he'll be one of the better backs in the ACC.
and that slip was tough to watch. It felt like Georgia Tech had the momentum there in the fourth quarter, reel off that big run. And then can you talk about this fourth quarter, kind of what you saw, what happened? So for those that didn't know, Georgia Tech lost to Virginia Tech 26-17. Game was in the balance, that big run, like you mentioned. But what would you say kind of happened after that? Because like I said, it felt like that Georgia Tech had the momentum at that time.
I think what happened after that is the story of the season as far as Georgia Tech's offense is concerned. They have the ability to move the ball up and down the field, and for whatever reason, when they get into the red zone, they seem to stall, bog down, that type of thing. They got themselves into a position where it was fourth and I believe 1.5 to 2 yards, and they made the decision. Coach Collins is big on the analytics and going through the situational plays, and his book told him, fourth down, less than 4 yards to go in that particular position on the field, you go for it. So he went for it, and the curious thing was that Gibbs was not on the field, and they went with their power back Jordan Mason, and of course they were stopped short. And this was, I think, the fourth game of the year where Georgia Tech was in a position in the fourth quarter to take over a game and close it out, and they weren't unable to close it out. And that's been the story of the season, aside from what's happening on defense. So, it could be a different season, but woulda, coulda, shouldas really don't count in football, and that's where Georgia Tech is right now.
And we've certainly talked about that a lot with Miami, the woulda, coulda, stuff. And I've talked about for weeks that it just comes down to results. And I know there's things Miami's defense certainly needs to work on, coming off this game where they gave up a school record in passing yards. So certainly Miami does. And I know many fans watching right now are a little hesitant, right? Because Miami, it looked really bad for a while. Does this matter? Does it make up for the losses? But like you said, it comes down to these results and the woulda, couldas, and regardless of what's happened at the beginning of the year with the other games. And like you said, these one score type games, it just kind of comes down to closing it out and getting the wins. And one of the things that stands out to me against Georgia Tech, so these two teams didn't play last year because of the pandemic altered schedule. Georgia Tech won the last two meetings between the two schools. And Miami's going to come into this game favored. This is the first time in a while that it's happened. So Miami's got to deal with expectations. Let's talk about Jeff Sims a little bit. And we saw it against North Carolina, and everything was rolling at that point for them. And then he, individually, he had even a bigger game those next few games, over 350 total yards in the next 3 games, 9 total touchdowns. He can do it with his arm and his legs. And Miami has faced some tough quarterbacks already in the ACC with Armstrong at Virginia, Howell at North Carolina, just seeing what Kenny Pickett's doing at Pitt. So, and Manny Diaz felt this way. And Rod, you've seen the quarterbacks too. Manny Diaz was saying that he feels like the ACC quarterbacks are a little underrated, under the radar nationally, just how many good quarterbacks there are. And he certainly is saying that Jeff Sims is certainly a good one. So what do you see with Sims and maybe the keys to getting over the hump for Georgia Tech and to closing one of these things out like they did against North Carolina?
Yeah, he's. I think people forget that Sims is still a young kid. He only played 10 games last year, and he's a little over halfway through the season this year. So he's still in that growth process, learning what to do in certain situations. And I think the first thing that Coach Patino asked him to do was to, don't always try to force the ball in somewhere. Take advantage of your athletic skills. If you don't have a a guy open, run the ball like you see with Burmeister from Virginia Tech, Pickett. You mentioned Virginia also, Armstrong. Those are elite guys who have experience because of the year they are in school, and they take advantage of those situations. So that's what they're asking of Sims. And when he's gotten in trouble, it's when he's tried to force the ball. But you can see him making progress as the season goes on. Unfortunately, in the Virginia Tech game, they had 2 touchdown passes called back, and Sims mentioned after the game how deflating that was. And so I guess, confidence does play a role in how a quarterback plays, and that's where Jeff Sims is at right now. And you talked about the games between Georgia Tech and Miami. You never know what you're going to get in those games. You go in thinking you know what's going to happen, and then you walk out of the stadium shaking your head saying, wow, I can't believe this happened. So it's going to be interesting to see what does happen this Saturday.
Yeah, to me, I think those are the keys, Gibbs and Simpson, what they're able to do offensively. And if they're able to get on a roll, like I said, I think Miami's going to be facing a running game that they've not seen. And I feel like these other teams Miami's faced in the ACC, it's almost been a running game that's complemented the passers, and doing what we saw it against Pittsburgh. They do with Anaconda, just does a good job of complementing Piggott. But it just feels like for Georgia Tech to do well, Gibbs and Sims with a running ability, where they can really get going. And then obviously Jeff can throw the ball without question there. So, and McGowan's a good receiver. So it'll be interesting. I think it will be. Rod, I think what Georgia Tech has really struggled in, and we saw, I went back and watched the Pittsburgh game after Miami had faced Pitt. So that was interesting just to kind of see that team, kind of see Pitt face both of those teams. And I saw it with Virginia Tech too. It seemed Georgia Tech's defense, particularly in the secondary there, and it's interesting in watching how much they've struggled in defending the pass, because you kind of look up and multiple guys are giving up passes. You see the different corners. There's secondary guys. It's not just one guy. I'm seeing all the numbers kind of stacking up with multiple guys getting open. I know Miami's going to see that on film. Tyler Van Dyke's coming off a couple good games, and he's going to look to exploit that. And Miami feels good. You talked about confidence. Miami feels good with their passing game right now. And I know that will be a key for them, and they're looking to have another big game in the passing game. What are you seeing in the secondary in particular? And Pro Football Focus, for example, they rank them last in the ACC in their coverage, Georgia Tech. So it certainly hasn't been good. And it seems like that kind of gets them in these games here.
Yeah, I think Van Dyke is probably licking his chops right now, if he's watched the film. And the curious thing is that 3 of the 4 starters are seniors, and you would expect some of the things that are happening not to happen. And after each game, the 2 words we always hear are communication and execution. And you have to keep wondering why those things keep happening from week to week. And, I think there comes a time, especially where Georgia Tech is at this point in the season, that perhaps maybe it's time to see if some of the younger players that are above the line, which is the system they use it to determine who plays. I think maybe you have to start seeing some of those guys. And but I quite frankly, I expect maybe Miami to come out and surprise Tech and maybe try to exploit the run a little bit. And Georgia Tech is going back and forth between the 3-man front and the 4-man front. So depending on what they see and what Georgia Tech comes out in, we may see a little more of the running game to open up the passing game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Another thing with Georgia Tech defense, I keep referring back to that North Carolina game, because 45-22 win. Really, they look like a dangerous threat in the Coastal, to be frank, at that point in the season, even though they had the loss to Northern Illinois to start the year, and just that 1 touchdown loss to Clemson there. But in that North Carolina game, 8 sacks was the most in about almost 15 years, only 5 sacks in the 4 games since. That certainly seems like something I'm sure Georgia Tech wants to get back to kind of slow down Miami's passing game. Why have they not been able to get as many sacks since that game? I'm not saying why haven't they had 8 again, but just the numbers are really down. Why has that changed?
Yeah, I think, when they went to the 3-man front, to use a 3-man front, you have to have that big time guy playing the nose guard. And I'm the one person that they asked to do it. Well, they've actually had 2. They had a player, Jamon Brooks, who came to Georgia Tech as a walk-on, and then they have a freshman. So both have played hard. You can't fault them, but it's just what it is. They're not getting enough pressure from the outside. The blitzers are being picked up. Uh, they just you know, some people think it's effort. The effort was definitely there against North Carolina, and you could see it. They were all fired up, but you have to do that on a consistent basis. And Georgia Tech has had issues coming out in that first quarter against some of these teams, and really putting the pressure on. And against Virginia, Armstrong just sat back there and picked them apart. And if they want to have any chance of beating Miami, they're going to have to put some pressure on Van Dyke. And that's the offensive line and the defensive line are two areas where I think Georgia Tech needs to have an upgrade the most out of any position on their team. So it's part of that rebuilding process that fans, as you know, are not patient people, and but that's what's taking place right now up front with Georgia Tech.
Yeah, the patience is tough. The inconsistency, I know that's a big problem, a big issue that Miami fans have, because you see it, right? You see the glimpses, you see the sacks from Georgia Tech, or the big plays that they're able to make, or wins that they can get. And Miami's the same way, in the sense where you see it, you see flashes, and then, or if it's a young guy, you keep talking about maybe they'll go to the youth movement. Miami's been dealing with that. And you have to understand a coaching standpoint, in terms of they want to rely on the veterans. They put in the time, they trust them. And I know from a Miami standpoint is they've been proven in the past, and they've just not even played, not that they haven't even played better, some of these veterans, but they haven't even played to the same level that they were a year ago. And they're starting to get some of that. In particular, Mike Harley's getting more involved. Will Mallory's another guy, a tight end. I think the tight end position is key for Miami. I felt this way all season long, that they need to get the tight ends more involved. Each of them had a touchdown last week in the win over Pitt. Georgia Tech's linebackers, I'm curious what you make of them, because I see they rank pretty high on counting stats, the tackles and things like that. Charlie Thomas is a guy that ranks high on Pro Football Focus with his grade. However, the other linebackers do not. They're low. I'm curious what you make of the linebacker play at Georgia Tech. And I think this is, again, you touched on what, if you think Miami can kind of get it going around their running game. Like I said, they're going to have to defend the tight end a little bit there, because Miami is getting them more involved. What's your make of the linebacker play, and how key is that in this one? We've talked about the secondary and obviously the defensive line.
Yeah, if you're looking at a linebacker group that is going to stop the run, well, then Georgia Tech's group is right up there with Quez Jackson and A. Sealy, the transfer from Maryland. Both of them had 16 tackles each last week against Virginia Tech. Charlie Thomas is the athletic guy out of the group. He's the guy that's going to maybe blitz and get the sacks, drop back in coverage. But I think you mentioned getting the tight end involved. I think those linebackers are a little susceptible to that tight end coming across the middle.
Hey, everybody, I want to apologize. I had some technical difficulties from my end. I want to thank Rod for joining the show. We were just about ready to wrap it up as we talked about the linebackers. I think this game is an interesting one for Miami, as now they play the favorite. Tyler Van Dyke does have some hype around him for his performances. The offense is looking good. Defense still needs work. There's no doubt about that, after giving up a school record 519 yards last week. It's pretty crazy to think about. Jeff Sims is more than capable of having a big game. I'll be very curious to see how Miami's secondary holds up in this one, as some guys continue to shuffle their roles. Younger guys get in there, get more experience. So very interested to see how this one goes. Miami's certainly favored. I do expect them to win this game. I do expect them to play well on the offensive side of the ball, because I think Georgia Tech has struggled, although there are a lot of factors that could play into this one, that it doesn't go well for Miami. So definitely stay tuned throughout the week. More content will be on InsideTheU.com. I want to thank everybody again for watching. I want to thank Rod again for joining and showing patience as we work through some of these technical difficulties. So I apologize for the ending once again, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. Thanks again. Definitely drop in the comments. Let me know what you think about this one. Is this one that Miami should worry about, or is Miami going to roll? Drop in the comments, like I said. Thanks again for watching, and take care.